Get ready, you should be prepared.
5, 4, 3, in the air, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, members of the media. Thank you all for coming here this afternoon. There's no question in our minds that of all the challenges faced by the government when we became elected at the end of 2012, rebuilding the economy and fixing government finances loomed as the most intractable. This was made especially clear by the Minister of Finance when he looked under the hood to discover the extent of the problems that have grown unchecked for years. Two facts reflected the seriousness of the situation. The first was the cost of paying interest on government debt, then surging upwards to $134 million a year. The second was the out-of-control deficit, which in the first year of the government was $330 million, meaning simply that Bermuda spent $330 million more than we were taking in. Minister Richards laid down a very simple two-track strategy to get Bermuda back on its feet. The first track was to pursue any opportunity to grow the economy so that it could once again meet the needs of Bermudians, from jobs to public services. The second track was to impose control and discipline on government finances, and of course, to get costs back in line with what Bermuda could afford. In other words, to make government financially sustainable. Today's budget is an opportunity to measure our progress since then. And for that, I want to commend the Minister of Finance and the members of the Ministry of Finance for helping us to get to this point where we can actually not only see light at the end of the tunnel, but a bright horizon ahead for both this generation of Bermudians and, just as importantly, the next. While this road to recovery has been challenging, and there will continue to be bumps along the road, we can look back and see how far we've come, how much progress we have in actual fact made. Bermuda is once again moving in the right direction. Our economy is getting back on track locally, and our island is getting more competitive globally. Major projects, which will generate much needed jobs, new jobs, good paying jobs, are moving forward. In St. George's, where a new hotel development is about to break ground over the next few weeks. At the airport, where preliminary work for the new terminal building is underway. At Morgan's Point, where progress towards resort development is taking shape. At Pink Beach, where they are nearing completion of the $51 million rebuild. At Hamilton Princess, now in its third phase of the $100 million restoration. And of course, up in the west end of the island, where the America's Cup Village is being built. All of this reflects new confidence in Bermuda as a place to do business that generates more jobs and greater opportunity for every Bermudian. The signs are good, but as I have often said, and a point that the Minister of Finance clearly said in the budget statement, economic recovery is never even, especially for those who are looking for a job or that contract of employment. To each and every one of you listening today or watching on TV, and to every Bermudian, I say, with total commitment, we have been working hard for you, and we will continue to work hard for you. And we are turning the corner. We are turning the corner towards a brighter economic future and turning around this island so that it is once again working for you, your families, your friends, and all children across our island in every community. The Minister of Finance's careful and responsible management of the public purse is helping to make this happen, helping to rebuild the financial foundation of this island for a better tomorrow. With those few words, I would like to pass it on to my colleague, the Deputy Premier and the Minister of Finance, to add his comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll be relieved to know that after listening to me for 2 hours, I'm not going to repeat all that. So I'll just keep my remarks very brief. And of course, we are here to answer any of your questions. but I just want to give a few bullet points, highlights of the way forward as we see it. The economy is growing. The recession is over, although many people are still experiencing difficulties finding employment. Our initiatives, as the Premier just outlined, are there to stimulate growth, and they have not yet been fully implemented. When they are, growth will accelerate. We are winning the war on spiraling public debt, and we are wrestling that stubborn deficit to the ground. And I invite you to look at chart 13 in the budget statement. I dare say that's the most important chart in the whole thing, chart 13. There is now a window of opportunity that enables us to confront more vigorously the fiscal challenges that cloud our future and the future of every Bermudian. Now is the time to come to grips with the government deficit. The objective of this budget is to lay out and start a plan to eliminate the deficit in 3 years. The Fiscal Responsibility Panel, which we empaneled last year, and the government, we both agree that high debt and stubborn deficits are the biggest threat to the future of this island. If not tackled aggressively, they will swamp the government's ability to do its job. It will swamp our ability to provide vital services to Bermudians, to all Bermudians, particularly those that are on the lower side of the spectrum. Services that we provide will be swamped by debt service if we don't do something about it now. And if the government of Bermuda is downgraded, a number of the international business companies will be downgraded with us, because a company in Bermuda cannot have a higher rating than the Bermuda government. Those are the rules. Those are the international rules I was telling you about in that speech. So if we get downgraded, they suffer the same consequence, or they're in danger of suffering the same consequence. And that means that this threat is not just to the government, it's to the entire economy. The payroll tax system, as presently structured, is unfair. And lower earning members of the economy get to shoulder more than their fair share of that burden. We intend to change that to make it more equitable. We haven't got the formula yet that works. We're in consultation with employers, business leaders, to strike a balance where we can get a more equitable system, and also to be in a situation where we don't do something that alienates business and chases them away. We already know that scenario. It's happened to us before. And we're going to be darn sure we're not going to make that mistake again. So we are in extensive consultation with employers, international business, and local business about structuring and restructuring the tax system. It's got to be done, but it's got to be done where everybody wins. So we want to broaden that tax base, but we're going to be in consultation with those areas of the economy that are most affected by that broadening. We're going to be in consultation with them too. So nobody is sitting here in government in some sort of ivory tower, gets an idea and presses a button and things happen. It's not the way we do things. We're doing things with consultation so that we can have a win-win situation going forward. But in the meantime, we have to have a tax increase this year, particularly in payroll taxes. The government current account balance before debt service for this year is going to be $18.5 million surplus. the first surplus we've had in the current account before debt service for many, many, many years. I think I've said 7 in the budget statement, but maybe even longer than that. We have actually reduced spending since 2013. We have reduced spending by $74 million. So I don't want anybody to say we're increasing revenues, increasing taxes to feed a bloated government and a bloating government. We're not doing that. We're doing what we said we would do, which is to trim government expenses. But the Fiscal Responsibility Panel has made it clear, and we agree, that if we are to reach our goal to eliminate the deficit, we have to have some increases in revenues as well as cutting expenses of running the government. And the current account balance for the ensuing year, 2016-17, before debt service, will be a surplus of $75.3 million. That means that we not only are we covering the day-to-day running of the government, but we'll be able to, that surplus will also be able to pay our contribution to the sinking fund as well. And that will be the first time we'll have done that. I think, I don't even know how long that goes back, but many, many years before we are in a position to cover the costs of running government and also to be able to finance contributions to the sinking fund without borrowing money. So our expenditures will the expenditures will increase slightly this year by 8.9%. Our revenues are forecast to increase by 7%, or $65 million. The overall deficit is budgeted to be $199.4 million, a drop of $20.7 million, or 9.4% when compared to last year. So we're getting that deficit down further and further, and eventually, in 3 years, it will be zero, and anything we do after that, we'll be able to start paying down that debt. That's the plan, and we've already started the plan. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Members of the media, just as a reminder, the ministers and the parliamentarians have an engagement right after this, so we can take your questions concise.
Why didn't you tell the public what that engagement is? Because this is a press conference and ask you questions about the budget, which is very important.
If you want to ask a question about the budget, I'll be quite happy to answer that. What's your first question?
Minister, you mentioned that the changes to the payroll tax won't come into effect until 2017, 2018 because you wanted to get it right.
Yep.
However, the taxes on the increases in payroll taxes and so on, and it is going to be implemented come the start of the next fiscal year for the average worker in this country. However, that progressive tax, you said, is not going to be implemented until perhaps 2017, 2018. Why wasn't that considered before so it could be implemented this year and so hasten the government's effort to reduce that deficit?
Well, I would have liked that to happen. We did not get the CARTAC report until very late last year. Once we got the CARTAC report and we determined what we needed to do as a government, we went into consultation with, particularly with international business. And we have not reached a conclusion yet with that. And that's the reason that we have to do this as an interim measure.
But a progressive tax would mean that those who can most afford to pay more would be contributing more to the government's coffers than those who can least afford, who are now being burdened with increased taxation.
That's correct. No. And incidentally, we're the first government to actually say that and say we're going to do something about it.
In 2013, it was suggested by the opposition, and you declined to even entertain having that discussion.
Well, I'm having that discussion, not only having the discussion, I'm doing something about it. The opposition's point was a point not worth mentioning. They had 14 years to do something about that. They did nothing. We're doing something about it.
Had it been implemented then or been dealt with then, perhaps would have been in a better
We
state.
did not have the framework that was put in place and the rationale that was put in place by the Fiscal Responsibility Panel that showed what we need as a government to get rid of the deficit. First thing they did, they emphasized that it was nice to have an independent group of experts confirm that this was the highest priority, because a lot of people wouldn't necessarily get that. So that was the first, it was really important. And the second thing, and remember, we only got that report in December. And so we got the car tax report, which we really needed to have to be able to put some sort of shape to what we needed to do. So as soon as we got those things and decided which way we wanted to go as a government, then we started the consultative process and we ran out of time. So that's why we are where we are now.
The car tax group was given among its guidelines, they weren't to consider any value-added tax. Speaking with the Chamber of Commerce, they suggested that the retail sector would have preferred to have seen a VAT implemented as opposed to increases in other areas.
Well, they didn't tell me that, first of all, because I've been in consultation with them, okay? Second of all, VAT taxes are very administration heavy. They're very complicated things. And we didn't want to get that into that. You know, I said in the statement, I'll tell you again, that we want to take measures that simplify our lives, right? Simplify the structure, simplify the administration. We didn't want to have to hire a bunch of more civil servants to work in the tax commissioner's office.
Minister, could you tell us more about the general services tax?
The general services tax is an initiative to broaden the tax base. I've said in last year's budget statement, I said pretty clearly, I remember that one of the problems we have with government finances and revenues is that it's too narrowly based. We have a service economy and we're only taxing goods. So the general service tax is the way to broaden the tax base.
One at a time.
So, well, what it means is that people who are providing services will have to pay a 5% tax on the turnover of those services.
Can you expand on that a bit more?
Pardon me?
Can you expand on that a bit more? If I'm a lawyer and I'm providing a service to you, am I going to have to pay 5% tax on what I charge you?
What we are doing now is that we've stated the intention of this general services tax. What we wanted to do, it certainly will affect lawyers. Of that there's no doubt. We are engaging, and again, in the same consultative process that we're engaged with other sectors. And we're much further ahead in consultation with the Chamber and international business on the payroll tax changes we want to do. We're just starting on the consultation with international business. I'm sorry?
It's a brand new tax you've introduced.
That's right.
Can you be specific on how it's going to work?
No, because I haven't introduced it yet. What I have done, I have announced it, right? I haven't introduced it yet. It's coming in next year, and the form in which it's coming in will, next year, not this coming year, next year, right? The form and the details of which that's going to govern this will be announced after an extensive consultative process with industry.
And if they're against it?
I think they'll understand what we have to do, and we are confident that we'll come to an agreement how to proceed with this. I think so, yes.
So is it actually wise to announce it and then?
Yes, it is. We're not keeping any secrets here. We're not going to do what the former government did, which is to blindside business with new rules. We're not doing that. As I said, we have got tough things to do, but the worst thing you want to do is to blindside business people. Business people don't mind bad news. What they do mind is uncertainty. That is not something that's tolerable for business, uncertainty.
Minister,
So that's what we're doing, and this is the way we're doing it.
Minister, I've got my own small business and you've made it extremely uncertain.
Is that a
Well-
question?
It's not a question.
Well, okay, why am I uncertain about how it's going to work on our own?
We'll let you know exactly how it's going to work. We'll consult with you. Right? I'm quite happy to consult with anybody. But the way we move forward is by way of a consultative process.
And Jeremy, let me just add something right here. Throughout the history of man, people have been hesitant and uncertain about change. This is a drastic change that we're talking about, and the minister needs to be lauded for the consultation he's done to date, and the consultation he has signaled in that budget statement that he will do going down the road in the future. And I think we all have to accept that if we don't make some changes, if we don't deal with the reality of here and now, then we're in trouble. And that's why we're consulting about it.
Sorry,
Next question.
How much consultation have you done on the GST today before you announced it today?
We've just started.
You've done no consultation?
I did say that. I would like to, when I say something, don't interpret it to be different from what I said.
I'm asking you how much have you done?
I said I have started, and we continue to do
Who
it.
be consulting?
I'm not telling you that.
Next question.
Can we ask?
Come on. Next question.
We have a question from the World Business.
Nonsense.
I was going to ask about the general services tax, actually.
Sure. Yeah, everybody's interested in that. That's fine.
Okay.
Can I just ask that you set a target of reducing your spending, government spending by 15%. You've got almost halfway.
Right.
How much of the tax increases today outlined today as a result of government not meeting spending reduction targets?
Well, I think that if you look in the budget statement, there's a very important observation of the Fiscal Responsibility Panel, and I can almost quote it. It says that after you take wages and salaries, grants and contribution, and debt service, it all comprises 85% of government expenditures. And what that means is that if you're going to make reasonable or significant, that's the right word, significant further cuts in government expenditures, you will be facing redundancies or outsourcing. And those are extremely difficult things to do in Bermuda under the circumstances. They have also pointed out, Fiscal Responsibility Panel, not me. They've also pointed out that this is a window of opportunity to raise revenues, to reduce and eventually close the deficit. So those are the two things that have led us to where we are now. The observation that we've done a lot of cost cutting. As the Premier announced, when we took over, the government was running a $330 million deficit, annual deficit. The deficit for this coming year will be under $200 million. And I dare say, as we go forward, it'll be a lot less than that the year after next. So, insofar as policy options are concerned, these are the policy options that confront us. That if we want to do any significant cost cutting, we basically have to lay off people, right? We have to lay off people. Now, having said that, I don't want anybody to think that we haven't done our best to reduce the size of government. We have. In the job survey, recorded 298 fewer jobs than the year before. Of that 298, 225 were from government. Having said that, we didn't fire anybody, we didn't lay off anybody, yet there was still 225 people less. And most of those were retirement and early retirement. So the point here is that we have, I think, made a lot of progress in cutting the cost of government without kicking people to the curb, which I have said and the Premier has said we don't want to do.
Jeremy, just let me answer a bit more about the increased expenses. We made the decision that in some areas we had to have that. For one area, financial assistance. We were going to take care of those people in need and do the right thing in that. Those additional expenses will come to the House of Assembly for debate, and I'm sure every minister will stand up and say that they were the appropriate thing to do at this time. And so that accounts for that difference.
If you reach your 15% target, would that have negated the need to increase benefits?
No.
If we'd reached the 15% target, we would have had to lay off people.
You say here that it's clear.
Two final questions, because I have another question here.
It just carries on. Very quickly. It says here that moving forward, it's clear that the government must revise its approach in order to implement further savings, either increase efficiencies, reforms the way services are delivered, or departments of structure. What sort of revisions can we see?
I think we can see some reorganization and also an increase in the sort of accountability factor, which comes up all the time when I talk to people in business. You know, they all complain that, you know, there's no accountability in government and that sort of thing. And we have worked very hard in government, in the cabinet in particular. And I don't want to steal the Premier's thunder, but we're working very hard to try to change the rules and, in a longer term basis, the corporate culture of government to put in more accountability, particularly at the senior level. Because you can't change a corporate culture from the bottom up. You got to change it from the top down.
Your statement is pathways to status, and this speech suggests, indicates very clearly it's about economics.
Yes.
Immigration talks about something else, legal rights and the right thing to do. Is that, can you reconcile that?
Of course. It's my job to talk about economics. So it's my job to, quote unquote, manage the economy.
Well, I guess
What is
the primary motivation of this immigration reform policy?
the immigration reform policy is an outgrowth of a number of factors, right? I have outlined in the budget statement the economic factors, and there are economic factors. That it's hard to grow an economy with a shrinking population, a particular shrinking workforce. And this workforce is shrinking, if you like, naturally because of people of my age who are getting older. I'm still working, yeah, but a lot of people are retired. And you know, I'll just give you an example. When I went to Central School, so I think, Pat and I and Jean behind me went to Central School. The population of Central School was 1,200 students, the biggest school in the history of Bermuda. Today, it's under 100. So that shrinkage is happening all over Bermuda as baby boomers get to retirement age and we move through the life cycle. So it's hard to have a growing economy when you have a shrinking workforce. And so I was pointing out the demographic forces at work as it relates to the size of the workforce and employment, and also the responsibilities of government as all of us get older and get more dependent on healthcare and all those sorts of things.
So what is the primary driver for that immigration reform?
I think that question's been answered by the Minister of Home Affairs and the Minister of Finance. Next question.
As you mentioned, Central School, I see that the budget allocation for education is once again lower than the budget for national security. What was the justification of the thinking behind that? Why was it that there needed to be more money spent on national security?
Since you're coming after the Minister of National Security, I'll answer that one. I think you can look at the number of departments under that ministry and quite clearly see that there are some very critical departments in there that provide much needed safety and services to the people of Bermuda. You have the Bermuda Police Service, you have corrections, you have customs, and all the rest of the departments. There are significant operations which we need to fund in the most appropriate way. So that, I don't agree with your analogy there.
The score report that just came out highlighted a number of shortcomings in the public education system that need to be addressed. Is this budget going to facilitate that being done?
The Minister of Education will talk to that in detail when we come to the budget preparation, budget presentation, and I believe we're in a good position to do just that.
I want to give.
Any further questions?
Brian, any last comments? Adam, any last comments?
You sure?
And does this
No need to be quiet. You don't have to worry about the rest of them. By
Does this figure take into account the amalgamation or closure of schools? And if you wants to address that.
we'll deal with that in the budget. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day. I already referred to that earlier, so that answer is yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.